morning, everybody. Oh, music went right out. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talk Sunday, Stream of Consciousness. It's great to have you guys with me for the ride this morning. We welcome everybody watching this morning on Facebook, on our TGI Sports Talk Facebook platform, YouTube, X. It's not Twitter, it's X. And also on Roku, on the Northeast Streaming or National Streaming Sports channel. You can download that for free. Please get that done. I'm not sure if they've changed the sorry, distracted by something there. Did I just freeze? I don't think so. You can download that for free. I don't know if they've changed the branding there, but Northeast Streaming Sports is now National Streaming Sports. And we're also live on YouTube on the Let's Talk Sports platform. We're happy to be with them. And guys, check out all the content on those two platforms. DDH, thumbs up to you. DDH, Dan Harris, who founded the Let's Talk Sports page and sadly passed away last, what was it now? Getting close to a year, maybe. I got to check my dates, but we miss Dan. We miss Dan a lot. So thumbs up every week we do that for Dan. Quick shout out to Ralph Williams at RW Media. Does a lot of great stuff there in Pittsburgh, some national focus, Pittsburgh focus, even outside of sports focus. Specifically, the sports corner that he does with Smokin' Jim Frazier every Tuesday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern time. So check out Ralph's stuff. He'll probably pop in and say hi later, and we'll give him another shout out. And special thanks to my guest on One-on-One with Keith Engle Friday, former Chiefs and Raiders and former LSU standout Harvey Williams, running back with all of those teams. We had a great conversation with Harvey. And by the way, the views are through the roof. We're going past, just on Facebook, it's over 3,000. Listen, the views just on Facebook. Just on Facebook. We're not talking X or YouTube, which I can't figure out. But we got some good views on X. Facebook. 15,000, 20,000 views a week to these shows. Great job by you guys helping me share our fun. So thank you for that. And next week, by the way, on One-on-One with Keith Engle, we'll have, we're going to have Randy Lurch, former pitcher for the Philadelphia Phillies, also pitched for the Brewers and the Expos and a bunch of teams. And Randy's is a great story, one of great promise, great, I don't want to say tragedy because that becomes an overused word. You know, tragedies are kids with brain cancer, right? But a fall from grace, and then, you know, he reclaimed his life, and it's a great story. Great book I read that Randy has out, which I should have with me, and I don't, but I'll make sure we promote it when we're there Friday. So we'll say welcome to him. A couple things. Again, this is your show. Bring what say you, as it says here. A couple things to bring out. Judge and the Yankees red hot. Judge had the best May, by the way, since Joe DiMaggio, basically, in most X-rays hits since Joe DiMaggio in 1937. 14 homers, 27 RBIs. Everybody's writing Judge off and say, well, a couple shows that was on, do you regret the contract? Are you kidding me? Stop. Angel Hernandez is out. I think we might have talked about that last week. Can't read my writing on that one I wanted to chat about. Did find out, by the way, that Randy Johnson is not the tallest pitcher ever to play. I think we might have talked about that last week. Maybe I'm wrong. John Rauch at 6'11", because we talked about this kid drafted by the Orioles. What's his name? Chris brought him up last week. Jared Beck. So interesting. 7 foot. 7 foot. There have been bigger kids, I read in this article, that have been in the minors but never made it to the majors. Get some other stuff in Major League Baseball. NFL Hard Knocks. The Bears will be the spring training, the training camp Hard Knocks. I heard some rumors that the in-season, because remember they do two, in-season was going to be the Giants. I don't know if that's true or not, but we'll find out. Scott Coate had also brought up a question in the show I was just on about if you had an NFL rule to change, what would it be? I think that's a good one. Bills sign a wrestler to play defensive line, Olympic gold winning wrestler who will attempt to become just a second athlete in history to win a Super Bowl and a Olympic gold medal, Bob Hayes being the other. College football, we've still got, we're really in pay-per-play mode if you want to talk about any of that. Notre Dame, Buckner's returning. We'll get into a lot of that stuff on Wednesday, but we can talk about anything to do with, by the way, 1,000 games will be on ESPN platforms this year, college football. Amazing. The NBA, we got the Mavs and the Celtics. What a ridiculous schedule, by the way. They don't start playing until Thursday. That's going to be like more than a week since there's been a game. What are they thinking about? Momentum totally broken. Oh, the NBA's, I don't get it. The Jason Tatum narrative for the Celtics, is that fair? They've been in 68 of the last 8 conference finals. They finally get to the finals now. And is that because of Tatum? Did Tatum ruin them every other time? Yeah, I don't think so. And then the NHL, we'll probably have Jim Biringer at some point to get us up to speed. And I'll get to your comments here in just a second, guys. Jim Biringer will come in at some time and give us an update on the NHL playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs. He didn't make it last week. He was fishing, but he said he'd probably be able to pop in today. And when we do that, we'll put our comments on hold and we'll revisit them like we always do. We'll talk about the Rangers eliminated last night. The offense just went sour. Jastrzynski played great, but Bobrovsky would played even better. And the Rangers power play 1 for 15 in the series. Terrible. Panarin hasn't scored in 8 games. It's just, the Rangers just fell apart, and it's sad to see. And we got the Oilers looking to wrap it up tonight. And then we got some coaching news we'll talk about as well. We can talk about the Belmont coming here to Saratoga this week. It's going to be a zoo. Fortunately, there's no, or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, there's no Triple Crown threat. So this Saratoga County will not be totally overrun. We got a lot of stuff going on here already. Good morning, Dave Guyette up there in Amsterdam, New York. Let's get our good mornings in. We got Paul Spada out in Wisconsin, who is everything from a Boston fan, including the Patriots. Thank you, Paul. And an Oregon fan. I don't understand. Drew trying to teach me a second language. I can't speak English, but Drew is now trying to teach me German. Thank you. Good morning to you as well, Drew. I'm still shocked Drew didn't correct me, as I've been saying Luis Gil for months now, and it's Luis Gil. Oh, Chris F. Grave is with us. Sports Talk on Sunday morning, loving it. In lieu of Bobby, is it Bobby Bonilla Day already? Teoscar's contract was very quiet. Here it is in part 2 of my comment. What do we got here? $23.5 million for outfielder Teoscar Hernandez. Only $15 million of that salary will be paid Hernandez this year, as the rest is deferred and will be paid in installments from 30 to 39. It is not. We haven't reached Bobby Bonilla Day, have we yet? I think it's sometime in June. I know Drew will be able to help us out there. I'm not going to be able to say your name. I apologize. At Laup. Hello. Good to have you with us. Hopefully you're a real person, not a bot. I don't mean any offense by that. But bots follow us around like crazy these days on Facebook. It's gotten outrageous. Good morning to Rick Sherlock. Rick, I feel bad. I'd heard, and I won't give any details necessarily. I heard you had an issue last week, and I hope you're feeling better. I didn't realize that was going on. Talked with Kenny yesterday. I hope you're doing much, much better. And happy birthday to Kenny Gifford today, too. Yesterday. Kenny's just a few years older than me. We had an interesting day on the golf course yesterday. Good morning, though, Rick. Hope you're doing much better, by the way. Hopefully the Yankees stay hot the rest of the season. Dave, we're going to have a lull somewhere. Everybody is. Again, I still have a couple. I told JB, I don't know if JB's with us yet. There he is. I see him coming up in the comments. JB called me out a couple of weeks ago because I was being too negative about the Yankees. And I really, look at it, I always root for myself to be wrong when I'm negative about my teams, whether it's the Yankees or the Patriots or the Knicks or the Rangers. I want to be wrong about anything I talk about. I do still see some danger signs with the Yankees. We need that bullpen to get healthy and better. The rotation, which has pitched really, really well. I mean, Heel has pitched great in the absence of Cole. That's not say replaced. He's filled in for Cole. You're not going to take Heel out of the rotation. But now Clark Schmidt's out 4 to 6 weeks. I worry about the depth there. Cortez has some injury history. Rondon, okay, for now I'm wrong. I ripped him when he got signed. I ripped him all last year, and right now I won't. He's pitching really well. Team's playing well. I worry about Stanton in the middle of that lineup with a 273 on base percentage. I mean, it's just not good, but we'll see. Yankees are playing great. Half game out of the best record in baseball. So I don't want to take anything away. I always try to look at, here's the possible road bumps down the road. Speed bumps down the road. Playing really well. July 1. Deferred payments are indeed a big deal. Doesn't Ohtani have a lot of deferred payments? Maybe I'm wrong. Bobby Bonilla, I think, is getting paid for another. Drew, you probably have this information up. I don't know how many more years he's getting paid for. I feel like it's in the 2030s. I love Bobby Bonilla Day. The Mets need to take advantage of this. If they were smart, they'd have Bobby Bonilla Day every day. There's JB. Good morning. Good to have you with us. Let's channel some Harry Chapin with a great tune, Sunday Morning Sunshine. Love Harry Chapin, by the way. Check out JB's stuff on YouTube. Hiccups again. Good morning, Steve Orpello up in Perth. Good to have you with us. Because Derek White, Celtics. I'm going to say we got a real person here. That's awesome. Listen, the Celtics. Let me take a look here at. I want to take a look at the Celtics real quick. Let's look at the matchup. Derek White has played very well. I think Porzingis might be the key to this series. I think right now I'm going to take the Mavs in 7, which means the Celtics will lose yet another Game 7 at home. And remember, they went decades without losing Game 7 at home in a playoff series. But I think if Porzingis, and by all accounts, he's getting healthier, and this big gap, why are we waiting? I don't even know when they last played. It feels like maybe it was last weekend. Maybe it's not a full week that they don't play games, but not to start this series until Thursday. And then there's 3 days off. And then between every other game, there's 2 days off. That's too much. You lose momentum. The NHL has been very good, playing every 2 days. Scott Colby must have got mad, or not mad, but we did a show Friday night about the Yankee Red Sox rivalry. Scott was on for the Red Sox side with Alan Perales on Let's Talk Sports, and it's a new series that Alan started. And check it out. I think he's going to do it once a month for now, and it's rivalries revisited. And we did a Yankees Red Sox revisit. We had a lot of fun doing that, and I was joking with Scott about my show's going long because he shows up 5 minutes before I'm going to end it. We love having Scott on. Scott's a really good guy, really smart guy. And if you want to place a bet, I won last Sunday's bet on the what was it? The French Open, right? I can't remember now. He gave me a pick in the women's side. I bet it, and I didn't even know I won. I got money sitting on DraftKings. I can make a bet today on the Oilers. CA, I'm sorry. Good morning to Scott, though. To give you a hint, I'm from Boston, but live in the Midwest. Just Paul here, no last name. Paul Spada, are you in here on 2 different names? I don't know. Give me a hint. I'm going to say it's Paul Spada, but I could be wrong. Give you a hint. I'm from Boston, live in the Midwest. Just Paul here, no last name. I can't think of anybody else that I would be able to pin that to except Paul Spada. More and more guys like to mess with me. Not that you're doing it, Paul, I guess, but they come in under assumed names. And Carlos used to do this to me all the time. We haven't seen Carlos in a while, and he's been tied up doing his own stuff. But, I guess I miss his totally off balance take on sports. Scott, Keith, I'm glad the home allowed you to do your show after that fire alarm was pulled this morning. Scott, yes, that wasn't very funny. I need my full 16 hours sleep night, and I got barely 14 and a half. So don't be pulling the fire alarms here in the home anymore, would you please? I'll make a complaint, and you'll end up in that, that fun room with the walls. You know what I'm talking about. Fantasy. Do we have to do a fantasy update? I don't even know that I got my lineup changed again yesterday. And again, it's on my own fault. I'm not making excuses. I always tell people, when the worst excuse people make in life about anything is I didn't have time. Everybody has time for what they want to make a priority for. And I've been very bad about getting my lineups straightened out in my fantasy baseball leagues, the daily leagues. There's Drew's and a couple other that I'm in, and I've been very lax. And it's just me. Lots been going on work wise, and I sit here and I go, I got no excuse. Do I have 10 minutes in every day to make this right? Sure, I do. Yes, I mean, I've had a lot of trouble with an abscessed tooth, as I said the other day. It's starting to finally feel better. By the way, you want to lose some weight, get an abscessed tooth, because I've lost like 7 pounds since Friday. I've managed to play 18 rounds of golf, or 18 rounds of golf. That would have been really interesting. 18 holes of golf yesterday with my mouth and head throbbing. So I could have found time. I don't think I ever got my lineups. I sit here, we'll talk about it, and I go, as soon as I get on with the show, and then I go do my sharing, and I do the other stuff I got to do, and I get the back deck ready to kind of spend the day on, and then I never go back. So it's my own fault. And we'll get better. I did this last year, and then I focused, and I made a run. But you bury yourself because you don't pay attention, and you can't come back. That's just my own little stream of consciousness this morning. So anyway, Rick's in a tie for third, but we'll be alone if Keith, who's last for now, wins his matchup. And I'm actually, I don't know where I am in that matchup because I haven't looked yet this morning, but I will make sure that I get in there and get my lineup adjusted. I got so many injuries, man. I'm out of injury spots. I'm out of NA spots. I'm out of everything in all my leagues, every league. Oh, so anyway, I'm going to have to drop some of those guys to be able to pick up more. Somehow Rick, so Rick's in third. Eric. I'm just, by the way, I haven't been loopy since, because I'm not eating. Oh, anyway, somehow he's in second, but it won't last. Of course, have confidence. You sound like Brett Kluche. I played golf with. Great guy. Used to work for me. He's an ex-hockey player. He made it to the AHL, let's say. So basically AAA in hockey, and didn't quite get to the show, but he was an enforcer, and he is a great guy, big guy, but he stands over every ball with the most negative attitude you can imagine. And I said to him yesterday, how can a guy who played professional sports have such a negative attitude and succeed? And he said, well, if something bad happened in hockey, I'll just find somebody and punch him in the face. I hope you're watching this morning, Brett. I was laughing my ass off. Bobby Bonilla gets paid through 2035. Scott's shaking his head. I think shaking it. I think that's what that means. I'm not good on these things. Can't believe you can bet against the Celtics. What in the world? I know. I do think, look at the Celtics have hopefully learned from their, again, am I wrong, Scott? 6 of the last 8 years they've been in the conference finals, and just their first trip to the finals in that time, I believe. And I'll ask you, Scott, since you're here early, the narrative about Jason Tatum, is it fair that Jason Tatum doesn't come up big in big moments? I've seen games where he has. And is the sole reason this team has never gotten over the top? Here's the thing. I think if Porzingis plays, I think the Celtics win. I think if they don't, I think that I think that the Mavs are hot. Jason Kidd has been here as a coach and a player. And I think it's possible that they can pull this upset. I wouldn't have said that. I didn't think the Mavs would make it to the finals. But this team has really, really played well. They had a great trade deadline. I think the Celtics are probably deeper. I've been saying all year, and it hasn't happened, that the Celtics would miss Marcus Smart somewhere. Maybe it'll be now. They haven't so far. But I thought they would. There was something that he brought to this team that they'd miss, and we'll see. Derek White makes all the difference. He's a baller. I don't disagree. And again, I do think the Celtics are deeper than the Celtics or than the Mavs. And you know, if Luka doesn't stay healthy, and here's the thing, you got two guys on the Mavs who have got to produce every game. Kyrie, who is not my favorite person in the world, but he's been very good in Dallas, and Luka is just amazing when he's healthy. Those guys have got to produce every single game. They can't have a down game because I don't think they have enough bodies to pick them up. But we'll see what happens here. Let's see what happens here. You still tell me who you are, by the way, Laup. Yes, Katie Volley-Nets. Oh, yeah. My winner from last week, I didn't even know I won. I got money sitting there on DraftKings. Maybe I'll just let it sit there and burn a hole in my pocket. Nothing really to bet today. Maybe I'll bet the Oilers. CA won't like me, but we'll see. Happy birthday to former American League save king Brian Harvey. Oh, there's a name from the past. But 61 years old today. Happy birthday, Brian. Brian was one of those guys who didn't have an extended, if I remember correctly, run of excellence. But one thing about relievers in baseball is somebody always seems to pop up out of nowhere and have great years, a year or two, and then they kind of fade away. I'm not saying that's Brian. Brian probably had a decent career. Most disastrous week in my 3 years. I believe Rick's talking about. I hope Rick's talking about fantasy baseball. I just can't. Here I am again, burying myself early in the year because of lack of focus. That's it. Well, maybe not just that. Again, I'm not blaming injuries. I got a comment about injuries, by the way, in a second, too, with Jalen Brunson. Because we're talking about the NBA. But as far as the fantasy goes, I got nobody to blame myself. I have not been focused, and the same thing happened to me last year in April and May, and even June, and I didn't make a run until July and August, and I finished 1 point out of the playoffs. Stupid. And with the injuries I've had this year, I got to be focused because I got guys in and out of the lineup all the time. Injuries. I want to talk about this real quick. Really impressed with Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson is really upset with the media and even fans because of the narrative that injuries cost the Knicks in the playoffs. And I love this attitude. They're not an excuse. I said this to Alan Perales about the Rangers during the MLB update, and even when we did our little rivalries revisited. Injuries aren't an excuse. Everybody has injuries. And Jalen Brunson said we should have gone out and won. We didn't get the job done. End of story. Injuries had nothing to do with it. And they were overrun with injuries. But that's the attitude you need to take, and that's why I love this kid, and I think this team will be here and be better for it come next year. Drew says instead of paying Bonilla the remaining $5.9 million in 2000, the Mets agreed to pay annual payments of nearly $1.2. That's a brilliant thing, right? So instead of paying out $6 million in 2000, they agreed to pay out almost $30 million. I can't do math very well, but it's over $25 million. including a negotiated 8% interest. So he's getting more than 30. Yeah. Well, that tells you all you need to know. You remember people forget that I think very likely Madoff cost can't remember. I can't think of the owner's name now. Good friends with Sandy Koufax. What's the old owner's name, Drew? Oh, my God. Wilpon. Cost of Wilpon's the team. Bernie Madoff, right? Yeah, I knew it was you. Love the Pats. Paul Spada trying to come in under the radar. There's Kenny. Good morning. How you doing, pal? If you weren't here earlier, I wish you a nice happy birthday yesterday. We had an interesting day on the golf course yesterday. Kenny affects my golf game in ways you would never expect. That's all I'll say about that. For my head, yes, just for my head. I don't know where it is. I have no idea. As Al McGuire said to Rick Majerus one time, you remember the great Al McGuire, he's coaching Marquette, and Rick Majerus was a great coach in his own right, was one of his assistants. And he came to Al one day all excited. He said he had lost 10 pounds on his new diet. And McGuire said to him, 10 pounds? That's like a deck chair blowing off the Titanic. I knew it. Can't fool me. You probably could have if you didn't make it so obvious to me, Paul. Scott will set my lineup for me. Do you want Babe Ruth in the outfield spot? No, I want Roy White out there and put Babe in utility. Maybe that's my problem. 6 of 8 conference. Here we are with the Celtics. Scott, give me the information. 6 of 8 conference finals. Second trip to the finals. Lost to the Warriors. Oh, right. I forgot about that. Warriors loss. Thank you. Jaylen Brown has not played well in big spots in the conference finals. So Jaylen Brown, you would give. Why does Jason Tatum take the bulk of the heat? The narrative, at least in the national media, has been Jason Tatum can't win the big game. Now his numbers, and I don't know about 4 quarters or how this is broken out. His numbers are really good overall. They've been very good this playoff series, this playoff run for sure. Kyrie will show his true colors in his championship, and I don't mean in the best way. We'll find out. Kyrie, look at that. Nobody's been harder on Kyrie than me. I mean, I've offered to take the guy and put him in my car and pay for the gas and drive him as far as he wants to go, and we won't drive off the end of the world. But Kyrie's been, since he re-upped with Dallas anyway. I think when he first got to Dallas, I feel like there was a little bit of the normal Kyrie nonsense. But since he re-upped, everything seems to be kumbaya there. And when Kyrie wants to play basketball, Kyrie's a very good basketball player. Kenny's got a point here. If he shows his true colors in this series, the Mavs will lose. So I'm still trying to figure out how I can lose 7 pounds in my head. Yeah, my brain might weigh 7 pounds, and it might have been removed at some point during the weekend. Yes, or previously. But I'm counting on Kyrie to continue this run. He had one bad game really throughout the playoffs, and the Mavs lost that game. Jason Kidd's got a lot to prove here. Luka's got a lot to prove here. There's a lot to prove on both sides of this series, and I think the storyline's very good. I'm guessing the networks aren't crazy about a Dallas-Boston matchup. I just don't understand why there's no games until Thursday. I mean, Boston swept, so they've been done since like Thursday. When did the Mavs wrap it up? Friday? When was it? I gotta believe it was Friday. Hold on, let me just see. Yeah, I got to go all the way there. Next game. Thursday, May 30th. Yeah, a full week between games. Ridiculous. I don't know what these... you got the stage right now to yourself in a way. Well, you're sharing it with the NHL, and now you're going to get the NHL giving you a run for well, not that the NHL will probably draw as many eyes, but casual fans show up for the Stanley Cup, and you're going to give them a head start. Tatum isn't that take charge guy, so I think that's why he gets that criticism. People want to. Well, that's the thing. Want him to take charge, but he really has a good team around him who can play well. And you're probably right. I think it's because, and I've heard this for a while, is that Michael Jordan, he had some pretty good players around him, but you always know who's taking that last shot. Kobe. And I've seen him give up the rock in a big moment when they've lost games where I feel like he probably should take charge. And I get you're playing with some good players, but we'll see. Today's bet is Coastal Carolina versus High Point College baseball. Loser go home today? I like Coastal Carolina here too. High Point's a great story. I don't know if they've been, and Scott, maybe you can fill me in here. I don't know that they've been into the regionals of the college tournament before. They just missed getting into their first NCAA tournament in basketball this past March. So I'm curious about that. And Coastal Carolina, I like in baseball. This is an interesting game. I hope I can find it today. I'm sure I can on TV somewhere. So maybe we'll get a bet in on Coastal Carolina. Scott's my guy. And we'll update everybody where we stand on the College Baseball World Series. And we can do it a little bit today, too, because it's your show. But Wednesday night, we'll get into all that and see where we stand in all of those the regional action as we get ready for the Super Regionals in a few weeks, the College World Series in Oklahoma City. Why my crew wanted me to join join like 10 leagues. I can't even focus on 3. It's way too much. I agree. I used to do more. Well, to be honest with you, I used to do more, but then I would focus on one because I was in a big league for, 30 years. 1987 we started, and I got out in 2017. And of the 12 teams, 10 of them were the same for 30 years. And it was an auction league, so it was a lot different than what we're playing here in the simple snake draft and daily lineups. You put in a weekly lineup. It was a deep league too. You had we draft guys in high school because it was a dynasty league and it was expensive. So, I mean, we put in like 200 and it might have been 300 by the time we got done. But I did really well in that league. I mean, I made money over 30 years, I can tell you. I won that league. I was in the top. I was in the payout probably 3/4 of the time and won the league. I want to say a third of the time. It would have been 10 times. I probably won 8 times in 30 years. Not terrible. Better than the Yankees. Now I can't. I don't know. I gotten older and it's harder for me to focus. No excuse. It's me. Well, you know what? They played like a girls' team last few nights. I mean, geez, no toughness. 1 for 15 on power plays. I feel bad for Shiskernan because he played great. He played absolutely out of his mind. And Bobrovitsky, I'm going to say his name wrong, played a little bit better. Panthers seem to have more speed. Panarin went into the witness protection program in this series. We'll talk to Jim Biringer about some hockey when he pops in here at some point here, probably in the next hour, and we'll put the comments on hold as always. Please don't go away, guys, because we'll come back. If you're not into the NHL, spend 10 or 15 minutes doing something else and come back, because we will get back to your comments. I make a very strong effort unless I got a hard deadline. And when football season starts, I'll have to get more regimen and stop the show at 10:30-ish, 10:40 at the latest. But I make a very concerted effort to make sure no comment goes on what? Unsolicited? No, I can't do it. There's my 7 pounds going from my head, Drew. Canadian Sports Hall of Famer Mike Weir. Only lefty ever to win the Masters, by the way. No, I'm sorry. Nicholson. What am I talking about? Only Canadian ever to win the Masters. Golfing like it's 2005 all over again. He traveled back in time in the RBC Open. Mike Weir is a really good golfer for a period of time. As I said, only Canadian ever to win the Masters. The second left-hander, or maybe he was the first. He might have won the Masters before Phil Mickelson ever won one. Math not good for me, so I could be wrong. That hockey player hits the golf ball as high as he does in distance. Then complain about a bad 270-yard drive down the middle. Well, Brett's an interesting character, man. He's very funny to play with. And I love playing with Brett. It's a lot of fun. And we had one beer after. Went home. Set a world's record. I've never gone and had one beer with Brett where it wasn't hours later I went home. We had one beer and left. He does hit the ball. And Brett's got this interesting, he's chopping wood swing, and he's at least like the rest of us, right? We play a few holes like we're really good at the game, and then the wheels fall off. Or the wheels fell off me yesterday on the back, I can tell you that. Next month, the NFL training camps start. The Bills train in Rochester, so I'm planning on going sometime. Well, that's a good move for you, Dave. I mentioned to you earlier, or I mentioned at the top of the show, where is this? The Bills have signed a 6'1", 275-pound Gable Stevenson, who's an Olympic gold medal winner in wrestling. They expect him to play defensive line. I don't know that he's never played football at any level that I'm aware of. This isn't the first time. I mean, this has happened. I mean, we've seen wide receivers like Willie Gault. I don't think Willie Gault played, and I could be wrong. I don't think Willie Gault, he might have played football at Tennessee, but he was an Olympic sprinter. Ronaldo Nehemiah, I do not believe played football before he was drafted by the 49ers. Bob Hayes is the only athlete ever he won a gold medal in the 100-yard dash and then won a Super Bowl. He's the only player ever to do that. So it's interesting. We'll see what happens here. I mean, people have talked about it's a sign of desperation for the Bills. You're just looking for players. Everybody's looking for players wherever they can find them. I'm sure there's other guys. Ernie Ladd. Well, no, Ernie Ladd played football, then he wrestled. There's a few guys probably out there that have made this type of jump. Then NHL final network. The networks have probably got to hate this, by the way. Florida matchup is either Florida versus Dallas or Florida versus Edmonton, which the NHL and the networks probably don't want to see this. I'll root for Edmonton here the rest of the way out, and I'm sorry, CA, that I'm not going to root for your Stars. But the reason would be, since I don't have a rooting interest in anything remaining, I'll root for a Canadian team to win for the first time in 30 plus years. Yeah, it's a bad matchup I'm not sure that. Well, the NBA is the networks are probably okay because the Celtics are in there. Dallas is a decent market. I guess I probably misspoke when I said they're probably not that happy. It's not a horrendous matchup, right? I mean, a bad matchup probably would have been Indianapolis against Minnesota. That would have been something that the NBA would freak out about. We also had some injuries yesterday too, Drew. Quite a few really good pitchers imploded yesterday. Kikuchi, Bradley, Olson, Marsh, Ryan, Steele, Green, Webb, Sonny Gray. And listen, I've seen Sonny Gray implode a lot having him on the Yankees. But we also had more injuries. Darvish and Musgrove go on the DL for the DL for the Padres. Yankees and White Sox are back. Now they are, by the way, since we talked Friday, they're back on a pace to break the all-time loss record. Friday, they were right on pace to tie it. Today, they're ahead of the pace. So I don't know what it is. I'd have to do the math based on their winning percentage. But I got to believe they're on pace to lose around 124 or 5 games right now. They were on a pace to lose 120 on Friday, and they've lost 2 games since then. Yankees and Brewers playing well. Here's another topic. Again, at some point, we should probably be considering in these conversations as we go forward. You know, we're going to get into manager firing season pretty soon. You know, what managers are in trouble? You know, is Kevin Cash in trouble in Tampa Bay? I'm not a big Kevin Cash fan, by the way. I think he's got rabbit ears, and I don't like the way he approaches a game. And I wish CC Sabathia had hit him instead of the Rays player that time when he risked his bonus money. We talked about Brian Schneider a lot on this show. I can't believe he's still there. I mean, a lot of expected from some quarters, including me, from the Tigers. AJ Hinch may be in trouble. We know that the White Sox manager's got to be in trouble, but it shouldn't be his fault. The new Astros manager, who the hell is that, by the way? Who's the Astros manager? Why do I not have this thing I usually have here? Come on, this is pissing me off. Where's my list of MLB managers? Whatever, I'm not going to worry about it now. Somebody can fill me in. I can't remember his name now. He may be in trouble. They started to come back. They're back to 7 games under 500, but they're only 6.5 out. Mariners, where's Robert Wardell this morning? Mariners are playing better baseball. I hope the Mets don't implode because Montoya is a good baseball man. He can't lose his job over this mess. Ron Washington, another good baseball man. He's got an impossible situation in California. Los Angeles Angels, whatever they're calling themselves these days. You can't keep changing your name and your locale and expect me to know where the hell you are. You just can't. We know that Council's not getting fired, but he had a rude homecoming in Milwaukee this past week, and they've fallen a game under 500 and 6.5 back of the Brewers now. Cardinals have won 7 of their last 3, although they lost their last 2. They've gotten back into the race. Shelton with the Pirates, whatever, he'll get fired eventually. Is David Bell, and Drew, I can throw this one at you, is David Bell in trouble? A lot expected of the Reds this year. They're 10 games out of first place. They're 8 games under 500. Now, certainly a wild card is not beyond, especially when we have so many of them, is still not out of the realm of possibility. But is David Bell going to be in trouble? That might be the most interesting question in all of baseball. Got to be disappointment in Arizona. Is Lavelle going to be in trouble? They made a World Series last year. Find out. High Point has been before. Cool. they got to their first ever regionals win yesterday. So they got swept previously against ACC Power in Vanderbilt, eliminating them. Nice. High Point's a nice story, and starting to make some waves in Division I sports. As I said, they nearly made their first NCAA basketball tournament in March. And it's nice to see these. I like to root for the smaller schools in these baseball tournaments. I mean, there's a lot of big powers that are there every year. But you always have a few teams that you can kind of latch onto and hope that they can find their way to a miracle of just getting to Oklahoma City. So that's a fun game to watch later. I'll probably turn that one on later on today. The AL West and AL Central, only division leaders are above 500. Not a big surprise there. I guess it's a surprise to me who's leading the NL Central a little bit. It's funny. I'm high for years on the Brewers, and this year I really jumped off their bandwagon. And they're playing as well as they played any of the last few years. So interesting. Judge leads MLB with, I have to go back and laugh at people who are panicking about Judge. I actually had somebody tell me that Judge was no better than Stanton in April. Well, maybe at that moment in time he wasn't, but Judge is 5 times the player Stanton is. Listen, Stanton was a good player at one point. He wasn't this 14 home run guy. Then you look at that and you go, oh, that's exciting. And then I hear every couple of weeks that he hit a ball 119 miles an hour, and I go, who cares? Because his on-base percentage is about 270, which is horrendous. We talked about this Friday. I'm tired of hearing about Stanton's back. They need to make a move on that part of the lineup. Yankees, we talked about, they're going to have a lot of influx of players from the injury list, the disabled list, which it still can be called for those of us who want to be politically incorrect. They're going to have a lot of influx of players. DJ's back already. We got a lot of pitchers, a lot of bullpen pitchers coming back. Some quality arms that have not pitched at all this year. Cole hasn't thrown a pitch in anger this year. So the Yankees won't just rely on that. Obviously, they're going to go out and make moves. And one of them might be for a first baseman, DH type. So I like Rizzo, and Rizzo needs to play more than not, unless he just goes into a horrible slump. But Stanton offers me nothing except those, once a week when he hits a home run. But Judge is, again, if you need, you can talk about Ohtani all you want. And I know that, sometimes Neil's not here, so I shouldn't talk about him. I know Neil has really ripped Ohtani as being an ESPN creation and whatnot. Ohtani's a great player. But Judge is the best player in baseball when he's healthy. And that's why the Yankees had to keep him at $60 million. And it's going to make it interesting what they do with Soto, because you cannot pay Soto more than you pay Judge. Can't happen. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. And whether if the Yankees are intent on staying under the luxury tax, I don't see any way they can trade Soto and expect to put a team together that could be competitive. My wheels fell off and you never put them on. You played some good holes yesterday, Kenny. We had some fun. We always have fun. Drew says Padres and Astros lead in batting average. It is ironic, right? 2 teams floundering. Astros worse than the Padres. But, it's interesting. Maybe it's helped a little bit, but, all these artificial rules that baseball puts in to increase offense, except for, again, artificially inflating the stolen base numbers, where's it had an effect? Teams still don't hit. It's still, you eliminate the shift. What's the big deal? Guys are still trying to hit home runs out of 2 strikes. and men on second and third, nobody out. We don't try to get that guy in. So you keep making artificially, try to artificially change the game, enhance offense, and keep putting hindrances on pitchers. And you aren't making the offense any better. You know why? Because you don't teach kids the right way to play the game. Pretty simple. I'll keep saying it. 1993, last time any Canadian team won the Cup, and it was the Canadians, of course. So how long am I out? That's 31 years. I said 30 plus. Thank you for that. The guy I like to call Jackson Profar. Sorry, Drew. Drew will probably have a comment about this one. Let's check out Jackson Profar. By the way, Drew, are they two different guys? I mean, was there a Jackson Profar that I'm thinking of, or this has been the guy I've used the wrong name for 10 years? Let's check out Profar's stats. I know Drew was going to say he probably won't continue this pace, but Jackson's played pretty well. I can't. Now I'm not going to be able to stop saying it. Oh, God. 10 doubles, 8 home runs, 38 RBIs, 325, 420 on base percentage, 910 OPS. I'm not going to talk about his WAR because I could care less. He's a great feel-good story for the spring. Where the Padres would be without him? Where would the Padres be without him? I mean, their offense has not been tremendous. Tatis's only got a 772 OPS. Machado, 660. Kim, 716. Jackson Morrell, who I think Drew and I both liked in the preseason, has not been good. And Bogart's 581. What happened to him? This team's offense is pathetic. Pathetic. And now their pitchers are dropping right and left. So I feel like he is a very good field. I think we talked about Jurickson previously, and Drew feels he won't keep. Well, again, this pace he may not keep up, but I think. Let me see something about him. Is he the same guy? I'm trying to figure out if Jackson and this guy. No, he's got to be the same guy. He's 31 years old. Started with the Rangers, right? How do I get to? I can't find it. I believe he started in the Rangers organization, if I'm not wrong. Chris Sale imploded as well. We've been waiting for that. Chris Sale's pitched pretty well, and Scott, you saw him pitch for, 4 years, whatever. He was in Boston. And except for a handful of games last year, you never got the Chris Sale that he was previously. And I thought this was a horrible move by the Braves, or a questionable one at best. He's pitched pretty well until yesterday. This Braves team better be careful because, they're now without Strider. They're without Strider for the entire year. They're without Acuna now for the entire year. And I know people will say, well, didn't they win a World Series without Acuna? Which I'm not sure. I think they did, yes. But they had Adam Duvall who came in, who's there now, and played outstanding. It's his best baseball of his career. They had Jock Peterson come in and play the best baseball of his career. They had Solar come in and play the best baseball of his career. Those guys aren't there now. This team's going to have to go out and make some moves. They're 7.5 games behind the Phillies right now. I mean, they'd be a wild card, but you've got to watch out for other teams here. I mean, it's possible the Braves don't make the playoffs. We'll see. Chris Sale. Yankees lead the Phils in ERA. Yanks leading AL winning percentage is not much of a surprise. The Phils, really? That is a surprise to me, though, Drew. I mean, again, I thought the Yankees would be better than last year, but And by the way, they're not running away from the Orioles. The Orioles are right there with them, 2 games behind them. I don't know. We had this conversation that, to me, I think it was Robert Wardell brought this up Friday, that the American League is better than the National League, and I don't really see where they're that much better. I mean, other than the Yankees, the Orioles, and the Guardians, and I'll give you the Royals a little bit, who's really playing that great of baseball? Consistent baseball. I think they're fairly even, the leagues, because in the National League, you got a handful of teams too. The Phillies and the Dodgers and the Brewers and the Braves now, but the Braves are going to fall back. Phillies are really good. I don't know if that's much of a surprise. I've said before, these Philly teams that got to the World Series 2 years ago and the team that didn't quite get there last year were flawed teams, but this team is better. And I love their manager. Everybody knows how I feel about Rob Thompson, or should. And if you don't know, he should have been a Yankee manager when Aaron Boone got hired. Should Boone be fired even though the Yankees are playing very well and good? No, Dave. No. I know where you're coming from, and I've been in the camp. I'm not an Aaron Boone fan. I think Aaron Boone has been a big part of the problem here the last few years. I know he won 100 games, and he's averaged over 90 whatever wins. Last year was, the worst year he had at 82 and 80. But you need to start holding guys accountable when they don't do well. Aaron Boone's a fine manager when things are going well. When they aren't, he doesn't hold guys accountable. We don't make them focus and baseball acumen is not being taught to some of these guys. Watch again. Gleyber Torres is going to be out of here. We talked about Moose. I'd be very shocked Gleyber Torres this year doesn't get traded, either at the deadline or after the season. It's very obvious to me Gleyber Torres is never going to be the player he was. And the Yankees may have screwed him up the year they put him in shortstop because he's never been the same. And Aaron has called Gleyber out once or twice now. Start doing that, though, when these guys make boneheaded freaking base running plays or throw to the wrong base or just fundamental baseball isn't happening. But no, you can't fire him now. He's not going to get fired during the season, Dave. But, now hopes are even higher for this team. So if they go to the playoffs and implode again, I will say again, what's the common denominator here? Well, there's a few of them, I guess, but Aaron Boone. This might be why I can't get Brett or Bob Boone, who I've been in contact with, to come on a one-on-one show, to come on, because I keep ripping Aaron. I promise to be nicer. If you guys come on the show, I'll tone it down a little bit. I doubt they've seen this, but if they have, it's not. I don't dislike Aaron Boone. I think he's a likable guy. I like Aaron Boone. I don't like the way he runs his team. And maybe you're telling me, well, geez, your team's done very well. We haven't won a World Series, and sorry, you're a Yankee fan. That's the expectation. You can tell me I'm spoiled, and that's okay. I understand that. Missed Drew's comment here. Did I miss anything else there? No. Profar's done this before. He'll fall back to earth as usual in the second half. Possibly. Or he's actually improved as a player. Maybe. I don't know that he's had this prolific a start, though, Drew. 10 home runs the 1st of June. Did he have 10? Did I have that number right? Maybe it was 8. Time will tell. That's why baseball's a great game. Guys go on streaks where they look like they're Mickey Mantle, and then they look like Jerry Kenny. You throw an obscure Yankee reference in there. Oh, God. Anyway, guys, remember at some point we may have Jim Biringer pop in here sometime in the next half hour, I would guess. Once we do that, we'll put the comments on pause and we'll talk some NHL. You're certainly welcome to comment during that section as well. Well, we'll come back, and I will not miss any of these comments. There's no reason I can't go a little long today if I have to. Toronto fans don't feel a connection to Shapiro and Atkins. They don't make themselves attachable, just mindless pap. They spew to the masses. For Schneider, I think he's a puppet for them. You know, there's a lot of that. You see a lot of that. I complained about the Knicks for years when Rose never talked to the press, never talked to the people when he's still running the front office. But, you know, these guys need to make themselves accessible, which is probably, I think, what you're attachable and accessible. And they do run the show. This is one of my problems. I understand, and I think the same thing about Schneider, by the way, Chris. And if they give Donnie Baseball the job at some point, I hope they let him manage his team. This team's got too much talent to be in last place, in my mind. But I feel the same way a lot about Aaron Boone. I think he's part of the decision-making as far as their approach to games, but I think there's a script that I'm told to follow. Get rid of these hiccups at some point. And that's what happens. And I think that's, and I do, and I guess in Schneider's defense, I don't know if it's defense or not, I think this is the case in many, many dugouts. Guys are there, the GMs, in a lot of cases, are much more part of the day-to-day lineups, decisions about pitching matchups than they ever were before. I don't think you can dispute that. And I don't think that's a great thing. Managers are figureheads in a lot of cases. So, just the way I feel. You think Dave? I did ask Drew specifically about David Bell. He thinks he's safe for this year. Management loves him, but the leash is probably tightening. I agree. I don't think this team can afford to fall much further back, Drew. He probably, I think they, and I do know they love him there in Cincinnati. His dad played there. He played there, right? I think. But with a team, and it's a young team still, I get that. And I've said many times that sometimes young teams take a big step forward, which the Reds did last year and caught me by surprise. Not Drew, to his credit, caught me by surprise. Sometimes they take a step back. I saw it with the Patriots when Bill Parcells got there. They went 10 and second year there. He went 10-4, made the playoffs, and they fell backwards the next year. Of course, Drew was hurt a lot. But if the Reds fall further back here, so I do think Bell will probably be okay this year, unless this team doesn't get it going and they keep falling further back, right? 8 games under 500, 10 back. They're still well within striking distance of a wild card. So probably doing anything. And by the way, that keeps managers probably safe in some cases and makes them more susceptible to be fired in other cases, because so many teams stay in contention for much longer. The Reds, if they feel like they should still make a run and start to fall further back, they may look to change the dynamic there. So I think the leash will tighten if this gets worse. Could Judge hit 70 home runs this year? What's he got now? 21. We're 59 games in. That's a 60. No, I see 60 possible again, though. And again, you got to remember with Judge, there's going to be an injury somewhere where he's going to miss a few weeks, because that's just who he is. And him playing center field every day, I think, is going to wear him down a little more. That's why I'd like to see a trade for a center fielder. You can't play Grisham. Grisham's been terrible. He's a really good defensive player, but he can't. I don't know if he's hitting 100. So playing center field every day is going to wear Judge down a little bit as well. And they may need to, depending on what's going on with this race, as we get into August and September, you may need to see him take some days off. Load management. But load management's, by the way, coming to baseball. I've heard a lot of talk about, I hate it in the NBA, and I hope we don't get into that here in baseball. But a guy who plays a game like Judge at his size, playing center field every day is going to wear him down. I don't think 70 home runs is really in reach. But, this guy is capable of a lot of things. And I think it'd be awesome if he did. I mean, especially with 1998, right? Was it 98 or 99? 98, I think we had the home run chase with McGuire and Sosa. At the time, we didn't know everything that was going on, with the steroids and HGH and whatnot. There were whispers. But Major League Baseball turned a blind eye to it because they needed that home run race at that time. Popularity was waning. I think it'd be great if somebody like Judge, he's about the only guy I can think of. I'm probably missing somebody in my head. Probably the only guy capable of hitting 70 home runs. He'd have to play at least 150 games, maybe more. He's got more of a chance of doing it with Soto in the lineup, I think. And if Rizzo hits well behind them, or whoever's hitting behind him hits well, can't pitch around him. But I really think he'd get pitched around so much, or he's going to miss time, and I think it wouldn't happen. He's gotten hot. So it's hard to just do the math and say, well, he can only hit maybe 60 with the pace that he's on right now, with almost 60 games we're in. Yeah, we're almost 60 games at not 50. So it's not even times 3. So he'd have to continue this May streak. Well, I mean, if he hits 15 home runs in June, then we're having a different conversation probably, right? But I just think at the end of the day, the center field thing is going to wear him down a little bit. Pitchers will pitch around him more if he were ever get close. And we'll see what happens. I'd love to see it, though, Scott. There was never a Jackson Profar except in those 7 pounds. At some point, did they call this guy Jackson when he was in Texas? I feel like this guy was called Jackson Profar at some point. I got to find out. Hold on. I'm going to put in just Jackson Profar. I'm going to see what I get. Oh, and I put in Jackson Profar and get Jerks and Profar. What does that say? I'm going to say at some point they called him Jackson. Let me go to his Wikipedia page. And if there's nothing in here, I'm going to change it. Also known as Jackson Profar. A utility player suffering shoulder injury. After 10 years, he was traded to the Athletics, and he changed his name to Jerkson Profar. No, I'm just kidding. I can't see anything in here where he's been called Jackson. I don't know where I got that from, but, my brain works in a funny way sometimes. Bogart's out for the year. I missed that one. There have been so many injuries I can't keep up. I did one entire MLB update show on a Friday about all the injuries, not just the pitchers. I mean, we focus a lot on pitchers because of the pitch clock and, the fact that, they're taught to throw as hard as they can for as long as they can. But position players as well. To me, there is just a epidemic of serious injuries to players. They don't train the right way anymore. I talked to Kevin Mench about this in my interview with him 2 Fridays ago. They don't do the right type of training to be able to last 162 games, a marathon of a baseball season, which is what it should be, by the way, before you speak up there, Kenny. Baseball's meant to be a marathon, and you need to build up your body to withstand that. grind. And players don't do it. They don't, I don't know. Maybe it's, again, it might be me and my old school thinking, but I'm not surprised. Like I said, I did an nearly entire hour on all the guys that are injured. Kenny, Oklahoma beat UCLA. Great game. Texas ruled Florida. Is this is it the baseball World Series, or are we talking softball? Because I didn't get a chance to check this out. We'll talk more about it on Wednesday's show for sure. But is that the softball or the baseball, Kenny? I'm going to say it's baseball or softball because I don't think Texas is in the baseball tournament. Injuries have killed a sales career here lately. I read that as sales, and I thought maybe, you were selling something and injuries. Well, this is why. No, he was a great pitcher, and injuries did destroy his career. After he got to the Red Sox. But before this year, I mean, last year he pitched a handful of games. Yankees owned him, but he had a decent year last year. But before that, it had been like 4 years since he had any kind of success, which is why I was surprised that the Braves went in for him. And I still like Vaughn Grissom, the kid they traded for him. I think the Red Sox will win that deal down the line. Maybe not right now. Profar was a huge prospect for Texas. I do remember that. He also played with Oakland and Colorado. Never hit above 254 for any season with more than 200 bats. So, Drew, I'll ask you this question. That's all accurate. We've never seen anybody at 30, 31 years old who suddenly clicked. I can think of a bunch of guys. Mike Easler comes to mind. He was a little older when he started to really get it together, I believe. And one of these, I could be wrong with some of these guys, so don't hold me verbatim. I say 30, 31. I'm going to say later in their career. Ben Zobrist. There's a guy that is like right on top of my head. I thought played with the Yankees, but there's been guys. My whole point is, I'm sure if we went through and looked, we can find more than just a handful of guys who really clicked in, after 30 or at 30, 29, 30, 31. So you may be very well may be right. He'll regress, more likely than not, he'll regress to his norm. But some guys finally get it. And it might only be for one season. We see it with pitchers. We've seen it with pitchers. Pete Vukovich was probably 30, at least in his 30s, when he won a Cy Young with Milwaukee after being a journeyman before that. Mike Caldwell with those same Brewers. Had a great season, I think, the year that Guidry won the Cy Young in 78. So guys can find it, even if it's for a short period of time, one season, right? So again, I don't think history says he'll regress. I get that. If you're a Padres fan or a Jerkson Profar fan, I can see why you'd be excited right now. And I don't think, to Chris's point, I don't think that whether he regresses or not changes the fact that, yeah, he's one of the season's feel-good stories right now. How can he not be? Especially you got a team that doesn't have many feel-good stories at all. Isn't winning the championship every team's goal? Yes, but there's a lot of teams that would be happy with the Yankees' record over the Aaron Boone years, is my point. Without Steinbrenner, the Yankees are just another team. I disagree with that 100%. 100%. And I'll tell you why. George gets way too much credit. I'll get credit for one thing. George restored the Yankee legacy in the late 70s. mid to late 70s when he bought the team in 73, but he was immediately suspended, by the way. And that 70s team, those 70 teams were great. But then they got old and Thurman died. And George fired manager after manager after manager. And he brought in everybody you can think of. Pitching, he made horrible signings year after year after year after year. And they were terrible in the late 80s, early 90s. They were okay during the middle 80s. Billy was a joke back and forth. I mean, Billy's a great manager, but the whole thing was just, And George was as much a problem on those teams when they didn't win for a long time, by the way, Kenny. George was in control all those years they didn't win from 78 until 96. Sorry, take that back. George got suspended in 1992-ish. And Gene Michael and Buck Showalter were in total control of that organization, and they built that team that they won all the World Series with in the 90s and early 2000s. They built that team. And and even after that, George was still a problem. George Steinbrenner gets more credit for less reasons than any owner in the history of baseball. He did more to hurt this team over his time here than he did to help it. That's my point. If he hadn't gotten suspended for the Howie Spira thing, then I don't know if this team would have won any of those World Series in the 90s and 2000s. He hired the wrong managers. He always brought in the wrong free agents, made bad trades. George Steinbrenner is the most overrated owner in the history of baseball. The revisionist history on George is hilarious to me. And I'm not saying you're doing that, Kenny, because people who hated him while he owned the Yankees, once he died, he was a saint. Blue Jays have been over a team for years now. I don't understand why. I think there's tons of talent there, Scott. I think the problem is somebody hasn't been able to put it together to help them win. They need sometimes the guy in the dugout who is setting the tone is the guy who's the problem. Schneider's been that guy. This team hasn't been the same in my mind since they blew a 10-run lead or 9-run lead, whatever it was in the playoffs 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago. Maybe Chris can straighten me out there, or Drew. Good morning, Danny Fuller. Not afternoon yet. Still 9:49 here. 6:49 where you are, so very good early morning to you. Chris F. Grave, thank you for the link today. No problem. Danny, good to have you with us. Happy birthday to your grandson. I think you had your grandson had his birthday yesterday, so happy birthday there. I'll get a couple. I see Jim Biringer popping into the green room. We'll let him have a coffee and a little steak and eggs that we got out there for him, and we'll bring him in here in just a second. Judge 60's a realistic target. That's a chore. I agree. Again, for all the reasons I talked about before. So I'm going to put our comments on hold here for a second, and guys, we can go to some hockey news because we're going to bring in our favorite hockey analyst, Jim Biringer from FullPressHockey.com, from Let's Talk Sports, from where else, Jim? Come on, where else? Jeez, I need a list.
I think you got them all covered. Bases are covered mostly. The big ones are covered. Oh, Sirius XM NHL Network Radio. We can go there. We can put that on my resume.
Forgot you were a big shot now.
Well, it's all right. It's okay. Where else can we put it? Nightcap recap. That's where it kind of started. I think that's about it. I think we could do that. That's good enough, right?
Well, I think so. Good stuff, though. Yeah. You're everywhere, and you should be, because you are. When it comes to hockey, you're the guy we go to, and a lot to talk about this morning. Rangers eliminated last night. Edmonton trying to clinch today, I think.
Yes, that's correct.
Let's start with the Rangers. I mean, 1 for 15 in a power play in this conference final. Panarin didn't score for the whole series. I don't think.
Nope.
This team, I mean, Igor played great. What's the kid, the Russian from Bobrovsky played bad.
Yep.
And that's the end of the day. Florida just looked more athletic. And what do you see is what happened to the Rangers here and why things fell apart?
So let's start with the beginning. So you mentioned the power play. You can go back and trace that to the Carolina series. I believe they're now 2 for their last 23 on the power play, maybe 24. Going back to the Carolina series, that was a problem. You could go back to the Carolina series. They're starting to get beat up. And now if you go back, we know like there's really no records in the Stanley Cup playoffs, right? Everybody looks at records. But if you really want to break it down, you could say, if you look over the last 9 games, the Rangers are 3-6. I mean, they were hot going into playoffs, but again,
they were fortunate. In a couple of those games, they were fortunate in those 3 wins.
Right, exactly. And you go back to the Carolina game, there's a couple overtime games. Carolina started to find their game towards the end of that series. And if it wasn't for Shesterkin and Kreider in Game 6, maybe the Rangers don't even make a conference final. Maybe they're losing in Game 7 at home. You don't know, but you could see they were starting to get worn out. And in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final against the Florida Panthers, they just methodically smothered, beat you up. And now you think about it, right? This is 5th straight year team from Florida is in the Stanley Cup Final. You go back to the bubble and then the semi-bubble. So the Lightning beat the Islanders twice, and then they beat the Rangers. And then the Florida Panthers, they got to the Eastern Conference Final, but now they beat the Rangers this year. So 4 of the 5 years, a team from New York has been eliminated by a team from Florida, which is kind of crazy to think. Talk about the state of hockey down there. But you go to the series, Florida just physically beat them up. Like the Lightning have done, like the Blues have done. Teams that have won Stanley Cups, they just beat you up. And look, we can all point to the guys that are making the most money. And that's the easy target, right? The guys that make the most money didn't show up. But you know what? You look at the Florida side. Their top guys, I mean, they scored, yes, but they weren't. If you look at production-wise, they play it one way. They make you play one way. And you can't play your game. You got to adapt to them. And if you can't adapt to their game, it doesn't matter, right? They just methodically beat you up. And it doesn't help when Trouba isn't playing the way he's playing. Fox is injured. Lindgren's hurt. Kreider's hurt, and you're going to hear the injuries come out. I know specifically of injuries on the Rangers. I cannot physically say what they are, but I know of injuries on that team. The top guys are hurt. Look, it's all well and good. Panarin scored in Game 6. Big deal. It came with an empty net with 1:20 left in the game.
Right.
Like, doesn't matter. Zibanejad, MIA. These guys, you got to put out will call for these guys. I mean, I don't know where they were. On a milk carton somewhere because they did not show up in this series. And that's credit to Barkov and the way they play. And everybody talks about, hockey setback. And this after Game 1, I'm listening to all these Rangers podcasts and people tag them. I'm like, this is the way you win in the Stanley Cup playoffs. You are not seeing 13 goals in the Stanley Cup playoffs. We had 9 goals in Game 3. That was a rarity. Every other game has been under 5 in the series. Like this, they just physically, you cannot find ice on it. When you play the Florida Panthers, you just can't. And that's a credit to Florida's penalty kill. They're aggressive. Paul Maurice, they're calm and cool behind the bench. And that's what they did to the Rangers. And look, not for nothing, and I'm not going to criticize coaching, but you have to stick with a lineup, and you have to roll with it. And it doesn't help that VC got hurt, and you can't find a number 1 winger for the top line. But mixing and matching guys the whole time in the series is not going to work. Look, the Rangers were up 2-1. Great. They probably didn't deserve to win Game 3. They probably didn't. But they did. And they figured out a way to do it. But here we go again. We're going to be talking about top guys not performing in the playoffs. And it's not a good thing.
It's not a trend I think they can let continue either. I mean, should Ranger fans be disappointed in the season?
I think there's disappointment right now because you felt like this was a team that could go to the Stanley Cup final and win because they're doing all this. But I made a point last night on my video, and I said this, and I think that's an angle I'm going to write about when I talk about the Rangers and dissecting their season. How long can you rely on being the comeback kids and the cardiac kids and on comebacks in the third period? It's all well and good in the regular season, all well and good early in the playoffs, but you have to be more aggressive and try to get that first goal and play defense and not wait, we've done this before, we can win in the third period. No, not against a team like Florida you can't, because the hourglass was running out. It was running out probably in game 3 and 4, and you saw it probably hit like the last couple of strands in game 5, and then in game 6 they were just tired and they were just beat up, and you can't play that way. You have to figure out different ways to win hockey games. And look, Jacob Trouba, he's a leader, does everything, but he's got to play more, smart in his own zone, not try to hit everything that moves. Maybe you could have put Zach Jones in because a little bit more speed on the back end. Again, you could play Monday morning quarterback after an elimination. A couple of days from now, you're going to say, okay, this was a good season. We have something to build on. This is the growing pains of learning how to win in the playoffs. Yeah. Right? And everybody's, this core's been together for a while. They should already know how to win in the playoffs and these losses. Well, sometimes it takes longer for certain teams to learn to lose and learn to win than other teams. Right? And now Florida went through those growing pains. Tampa took some time. Washington, it took forever. You're seeing that once you get to the Eastern Conference Final, you just can't rely on comebacks, just can't rely on power play, just can't rely on a penalty kill, and you just can't rely on Igor Shesterkin. And Shesterkin, look, he played his heart and soul out like he did last year. He was the main reason this series went 6 games. Probably should have been over in 5. Really should have been. It probably should have been over in 5. Yeah. It wasn't. Shesterkin's the reason. It feels like it's Henrik Lundqvist 2.0 again with this Rangers team. The goalie's doing everything, and nobody in front of him's helping him out.
Do you think talking about guys who need to learn how to win in the playoffs, at some point, don't you have to say these guys are never going to get it? I mean, you can't have guys like Panarin disappearing for weeks at a time during the playoffs. I mean, you have to think maybe I need an influx of guys who might be able to get us over the hump and learn faster.
Right, exactly. And that's what you're seeing in Toronto. And look, Panarin was hot to start the playoffs. Kreider was hot to start the playoffs. Zibanejad was hot to start the playoffs. Trocheck played well. Lafreniere took his next steps. But again, when you have guys that are healthy, look, I get it. You want to bring guys back into your lineup that were there. But I disagreed in Game 3 bringing Keto back into the lineup when I was there. I didn't think that was a smart move by the Rangers. I didn't think Blake Wheeler coming in the lineup in Game 4 was a smart move. You got to let these guys be ready for the next season, and especially in the case with Keto. And you had a lineup that was kind of rolling, right? And they were playing well. And I understand you have to make changes when you lose, but did you really have to make wholesale changes? Because, they played a good Game 1. Yeah, they got shut out, but they came back and won 2 overtime games. I think it's 50-50 when it goes to overtime, but, they were hanging with the Florida Panthers for a while. But look, the Florida Panthers play one way for 60 minutes. You can't play their way for just 20 and think you're going to win a hockey game. I've seen it. Look, guys, everybody knows. Everybody sees the backgrounds. They know. This goes back to when the Devils played. I mean, this beats you up. Right. And they physically beat you up. Third guy high end goal. I mean, the goalie can only do so much. He can't score goals. And it's the same year. It's everything with the Rangers. Like last year too. When you look back, Zibanejad, Kreider, Panarin, no goals, no points in games 5 and 6 and 5 and 7 against the Devils when they got shut out. Go back to when they lost. They're up 2-0 against the Lightning in a conference final. MIA for the next 4 games. So, sometimes you have to look at everything. Look, Panarin had a great season. Doesn't matter what you do in a regular season. If you don't get it done in the playoffs,
right?
Your regular season stats don't mean anything.
And this is kind of what we talked about a little bit, but does Rangers management tend to overreact to the end of the season and feel the need to retool? when they don't have to.
I mean, you and I talked about this a couple of years ago after the bubble, like when they overreacted with John Davidson and Jeff Gordon, they were building something because, look, let's be honest, they got in because of the COVID bubble, and then they took a step back and they're like, oh, we got to destroy everything. And look, Chris Drury made some smart moves, but again, they still need a number one right winger to play on that top line with Kreider and Zibanejad. They don't have it. I don't know if they're going to overreact to a point where, I mean, let's be honest, coach isn't going anywhere, but you're going to probably see a different look next year. You know, guys are getting older in the tooth. They got to figure out ways to get this stuff done. But I don't think they're going to overreact to a loss this year. I mean, a couple wins away from a Stanley Cup final again. They just got to dig down, figure out a way to get it done. And look back on it and say, okay, maybe we got to retool some things on the defense now. Maybe bring a Zach Jones in earlier in the series. Give some different looks to teams, right? Like, I would have personally put Zach Jones in, run 11-7. Maybe you throw Jones up as a winger. He's got speed. He could have given the Rangers a spark because Fox couldn't move. Lindgren couldn't move. Miller was, like, you could tell these guys just couldn't move. And maybe it's just a different look here and there. And, again, we'll see what happens. I mean, locker clean out there will be in the next couple of the days. And we're going to hear about the injuries, the long list of injuries that guys were probably dealing with, especially Fox, who's going to probably need knee surgery after Nick Jensen hit. I think that was already made public. So, but, I mean, it's a laundry list of things. But, again, New York Rangers just – look, you look at the successes and the failures and you say to yourself, okay, it's got to be soon. And, again, like I said this the other night because everybody's making the comparisons to 94. Oh, 94 – and it not 0-7 in the last game fives in Madison Square Garden in the Eastern Conference Final. And everybody's like, oh, they won game 6 in 94. Yeah, and I'm like, well, if the Devils were the Devils in 94 and had learned how to lose in the playoffs and what it takes to win, the Rangers wouldn't have come back from 2-0 down to win that game in game 6. The Devils would have made sure there would have been no shots on goal. They would have locked it down and nobody was scoring. So it's You when you see a team like Florida and they understand what it takes to win, you got to look at like Gretzky. I love what Gretzky's always said about when the Edmonton Oilers lost in the Stanley Cup final for the first time to the in '83 when they lost to the Islanders. He just went by the Islanders locker room and just saw these guys with ice bags and everything, and he saw what it took to win in a Stanley Cup. And then they did it the next year and they beat the Islanders. But again, it's something up here.
Yeah. Anytime I heard the 94 comparison, even when Mark Messier's talking about it, I kept saying to myself, but there's no Messier and there's no Brian Leetch.
No, there's no Brian Leetch. There's no Messier. The leadership group is different now than it was in 94. And don't forget, the Rangers went through how many growing pains when Messier got there. They lost to Pittsburgh a bunch of times. They lost to this team in the playoffs. And they almost blew a 3-1 lead to, Vancouver and lost the Stanley Cup. Trevor Linden hit the goalpost.
Right. Good morning, Nick Botkins from the Botkins Show. Check his stuff out on Let's Talk Sports. Really good stuff. Almost every night of the week, I think Nick's on. I don't know. Rangers lost because they didn't shoot, attack enough. We know that, Carlos, for sure. I mean, it goes without saying.
But again, shoot and attack enough. Florida didn't give you the ice.
Exactly.
Puck was in, puck was out. I mean.
But to your point, we need guys who are quicker and can get out of those situations, right?
Yep.
Injuries, I agree with that 100%. We can blame injuries. Everybody can blame injuries.
Injuries isn't an excuse when you're getting your butt handed to you every night on a platter.
Agree 100%. I'm not sure.
Oh, he's just talking about playoffs.
Yeah, going back in time. Anyway, let's move on to the other series real quick. And then, Chris, I know you got another comment that kind of.
I know Scott had something up about what's the key to Florida's success.
Yeah, sorry, I took that up because I thought we touched on that kind of.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, look, Paul Maurice, a great coach.
Yeah.
He's got these guys believing in the system, calm, cool behind the bench. There's just a belief, and they have that mentality that they're not satisfied right now. And they know now, they've been to a Stanley Cup final. They know what it takes. And they have this mentality, okay, it's not good enough now. Okay, yeah, we're expected to be here. And that's the key to success right now in the Florida Panthers.
Actually, staying here, Scott wants to know that the Rangers have enough room to make moves this offseason.
Well, that's the big key, right? The salary cap is going to be
Yeah.
in effect, and you're going to have to pay. Igor's eligible for an extension July 1st. We'll see if they give him one. They probably will, but I don't know if they'll do it this year. But, he's eligible for an extension. And then, you got to see what other pieces, are you going to move? I think Kakko's probably going to be on the way out unless there's a belief that they can put him in the top 6 because he's got to play there. Like, I was talking with somebody, why couldn't you just if Hito was ready to play or he's not or whatever, why can't you just go back to the kid line?
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
So I think there'll be moves. I think, a guy to watch is Capo Kakko. I think, teams were asking about him. So maybe a new system, a new place he could develop into the player everybody thinks he can be.
And Chris, you do have one more question I'll get to after we get done here because it's about your Devils. And I don't want to. We'll stay on the Stanley Cup for just now. The CA's not here to defend his Dallas teams. Edmonton beat the Dallas up pretty good in Game 5, I thought, and
lifeless. They were lifeless.
Yeah. Is Dallas got anything left to come back today?
I mean, look, you never say never in a Stanley Cup playoffs, right? Edmonton's going home. It's gonna be jacked up, right? I think the Oilers are playing. Look, Chris Tanev is not 100%. And I could clearly see that in Game 5. But the Oilers are attacking with speed. They're using McDavid, Draisaitl, Bouchard. Stuart Skinner is not – look, we make the comparisons. I said it in 2022 when, he had Darcy Kemper, and they're winning in spite of Kemper. The Oilers are doing the same thing, but Stuart Skinner's coming up with the big saves. Since going down 2-0 in Game 4, the Edmonton Oilers have outscored the Dallas Stars 8-1. That's a big difference right now. They're playing with speed. They got the power play cooking right now. The Oilers' penalty kill is the best in the National Hockey League, despite the Rangers having 6 shorthanded goals. But the Oilers' penalty kill, they're protecting Stuart Skinner. They're playing defense. That's the big thing. That's the difference than with the Oilers teams in the past to the Oilers teams now. They're playing defense, limiting shot totals. Kick when the rebounds go out, they're trying to get it out. They're just not relying on McDavid and Draisaitl to do it all. Corey Perry's in the lineup. Smart changes. Chris Knobloch's got this team playing the right way. Stuart Skinner's coming up with the big saves. Knobloch's pushing all the right buttons for the line changes and the lineup changes. And look, the Oilers are figuring out ways to win right now. And I think the big thing is right now is with Chris Tanev hurt, you're seeing McDavid and Draisaitl take over games like you would. And they're using their speed, and they have a lot of speed, and that's the key right now. I mean, Dallas is still a good team. They're not out of it yet. Jake Ottinger's playing well, but again, you can't have 6 shots and through 30 minutes of hockey and then expect to win a hockey game. Look, was the Ryan Suter penalty in Game 5 a penalty? No, it's hockey. It was a soft call, but I think the way Knobloch had talked earlier in the series about how the Edmonton wasn't getting the power plays and all, I mean, there's a little bit of influence there, plus it's McDavid. But, again, no comment on the officiating till what, look, it's been bad all playoffs. But, again, you got to let guys play. This is the playoffs. But, again, you got to earn the power plays, and I think the Edmonton Oilers are playing their game. And again, I think the injury to Tanev is what's really hurting the Dallas Stars defense right now.
I kind of think they wrap it up today. So my question is going to be two questions here. Does Canada get its first Stanley Cup in 31 years?
Wow.
By the way, are the networks in the NHL excited about this Oilers and Florida matchup?
I would think so. I mean, you have the 2 best players in the world. Connor McDavid's going to be on national television.
Yeah.
I mean, you want your stars in the Stanley Cup final, right? I mean, look. I mean, if the Edmonton Oilers figure out a way to win Game 6 and we have an Edmonton, Florida Stanley Cup final, man, the way the Florida Panthers are playing right now, I've bet against the Oilers a lot in the playoffs. I didn't think they had. I thought they could beat Vancouver because the way Vancouver played in the first round, I'm just like, I thought Dallas was the better team because of their depth. The Oilers' depth is pretty good. Florida just looks so good. They really look good.
Yeah, they do.
They really, really look good. I think the drought might continue. But this Oilers team continues to underestimate and not overachieve, but I think they've proven a lot of critics wrong in the playoffs. And maybe if they beat Dallas here tonight, you never know, right? You never know.
I'm going to be rooting for my Canadian friends.
Look! The Devils were the Devils were a huge underdog in 1995. Nobody believed that they could beat the Detroit Red Wings, and they swept them. So, I would for me personally, I would love to see Edmonton win a Stanley Cup. It'd be great.
I'd be great for the NHL for Canada finally winning a
right. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, well, we're on the Oilers. Do you think the Oilers re-sign Leon Drysdale?
Draisaitl? Yeah, I think Draisaitl.
Sorry,
yeah, I think Draisaitl will stay. I think Draisaitl's gonna stay. I think he's gonna pay him. Look, Bouchard's got to get paid. They're gonna have to move out some money, like with you see with Toronto. But I think Draisaitl's gonna stay, and I think that it's McDavid and Draisaitl show. I think they're best friends, and I think it's time to really believe that this is what they are.
One that might hit close to home for you here. Chris wants to know about breaking down Curtis
McDermott's. Yeah, I mean, look,
your deal.
The Devils' 3-year deal with McDermott is for physicality and physical presence and protection. Right. 3 years is a little high for me. The AAV is okay. It's $1.5 million, but again, it's do I think he plays a lot? No, but it's to protect the star players on the team. But they have other work to do. They got to get a goalie, obviously. Is it Markstrom? Is it Saros? Is it Olmark? Is it somebody else? They got to upgrade the defense. Get a scoring winger in there. Maybe a Vladimir Tarasenko if he becomes available. That's a guy that they've always looked at. So, there's a lot of work to do with the New Jersey Devils this season. But they got the new coach, Sheldon Keefe. Saying the right things at the press conference. But again, everybody wants to win. Only one team, not all 32 teams win the Stanley Cup. Only one team takes home the Stanley Cup. So here we are.
Any thoughts, and we can get into this in the coming weeks if you want, but any thoughts that stand out about the coaching carousel so far this offseason? I think all the positions have been filled but one.
Yeah, San Jose is the last one. It could come down to Ryan Warsofsky, the assistant coach, and Marco Sturm, who got permission, who was in the LA organization, former Shark. I think that'll get it done. Bilesman, not surprised by the hire there. I think I
like what the Krakens did.
I think, dude, I like that. And then everything else kind of self-explanatory. What they did, Scott Arniel in Winnipeg. I like what I think the only head scratcher probably was Lindy Ruff in Buffalo. Like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing?
That is a little strange for sure.
Yep.
James Martin says Jim's a great resource for his hockey knowledge, which a lot of my fan base has certainly expressed over the years, Jim. So as you know, a lot of casual hockey fans that have learned a lot about hockey from you here. So
well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Just bringing the sport of hockey, like I said, I saw on your show, who's does great work as well. I just try to bring the knowledge to a game that is not covered a lot in the States.
And we appreciate that. Danny says if Edmonton wins tonight, it won't be more than 5 games. Florida. I guess Florida in 5 games. He's saying if Talon wins the next 2, it's a crazy great series versus Florida.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I don't know. I mean, look, the Oilers have proven, like I said, a lot of people wrong. A lot of people thought Dallas would walk over Edmonton. I think if Edmonton gets there, it could be a six game series. I think Florida could win in 5. But again, you never know, right?
No, you don't, for sure, and especially in playoff. Playoff hockey, playoff basketball. It's all it's a different animal, and expect the unexpected.
Exactly.
What thoughts you have to leave us with here today, Jim?
All right. So I think this should be a staple segment here when I come on, like my closing thought, and then. Look, the Utah Hockey Club is going to be making some moves. I don't like the names, but we've already done that one. So we're going to talk about, in my closing segment here, the superstition of the Prince of Wales Trophy and these conference trophies, right? So I was doing a little research this morning because everybody's like, "Oh, Florida didn't touch it," and this and that. The Devils. When Scott Stevens was the captain, touched the trophy 4 times, went 3-1 in the Stanley Cup final. The year they didn't touch it, when Zach Parise was captain, they lost to the LA Kings. It doesn't matter if you touch it. It doesn't matter if you don't touch it. The best team is going to win the Stanley Cup. And that's usually what happens. The on-ice product determines what happens. Whether you touch it, you don't touch it. You could touch it one year, you don't touch it the next year. I know it's a hockey superstition. We all have them. But does it really matter?
No, it doesn't, by the way. It doesn't matter if you don't change your clothes. You wear the same clothes every time to watch a game. It has no effect, because I do that type of thing.
Yeah.
During football season, it does have no effect on anything.
No, I mean, look, it's, it's crazy. I mean, like, a lot of people, and I think the other thing is, and I think the other argument is the season in the National Hockey League has to figure out a way to get back to finishing in mid-June. Like, we cannot have the Stanley Cup final start and potentially end 4 days before the NHL draft. Like, that can't happen in a week before free agency. Way too late.
I can say the same for the NBA too.
Yeah.
I screwed up your ending because I missed this question from Scott, and I don't want to miss it because he gave me, I think, this player to bet on last week.
Yeah, Iga Swiatek, the two-time defending champions, won the title there 3 times at French Open. Yeah, I would not. She's looked great after that second round. Impressive comeback against Naomi Osaka, probably one of the matches of the tournament. Look, Novak Djokovic survived 5-setter last late into the evening in the States, early morning in Paris, 3 a.m. under the lights. So it's a good tennis tournament so far, but Swiatek is the winner.
Excellent. We got a little tennis out of Jim Biringer.
Yes, we did.
You never know where we'll go with Jim Biringer. We did screw up his final thoughts, but
that's okay.
We'll do
that's
that.
Okay.
Jim, I appreciate you coming in today, and hopefully we'll chat with you next week if you have time. If not, obviously, fishing's important as well. I understand.
Absolutely. No, hopefully to talk to you next week. Can't wait to do it again. Take care, everybody.
Guys, Jim, have a great day.
Hey, have a great day, everybody.
Bye-bye. The great Jim Biringer comes in and fills us in a National Hockey League, and now tennis. So let me find my correct, there we go. I got to get back to your comments and figure out where we left off here. So great job, Jim. As always, you guys too with the great comments as well. And I like Edmonton today. And I'm going to be rooting for Edmonton because I want my Canadian brothers to get a Stanley Cup. 31 years without a Canadian team is just not okay in the NHL. It would be good for the NHL to get there. All right, so I got to figure out where we left off here. So hold on one second, and you guys continue. If we got some hockey stuff, we'll catch up to it before. I think the last one I had was something about Steinbrenner. Danny Fuller said good morning. We'll find you. Your brain works much better. Call. I know I didn't get there. Here we go. Second, I think this is where I left off. Second most walk-off games in the regionals of all time, and it's not over yet. I still think we're talking about softball. You haven't given me a explanation there, Kenny. And I have watched some of the softball, and I watch a little today and some of the baseball as well because I'm really interested, as we talked about the Coastal Carolina High Point NCAA baseball game as well. Our Canadian correspondent gets into his cards up to 1991. The late Dave Henderson at a World Series average of .324 with 4 home runs in 20 games. Listen, he was a clutch player, David Henderson. I remember him hitting a home run in that weird 86 season. We all know about what happened with the Mets and Red Sox, but we forget about the Red Sox and Angels series where the Angels were in control and lost it. Henderson hit a big home run in that series, and we know about the Donnie Moore implosion and the tragedy that took place following all of that not long after. So great name from the past, the great Dave Henderson. Kenny says your brain works much better after golfing with me. Kenny and I know what he's referring to. And by the way, in case anybody figures out what he's talking about, mine is all secondhand. Just to be clear. There's Kenny with my softball question. Thank you, Kenny. Listen, those games are great. I tell you, those women are playing great. One thing I was going to mention in my kind of primer, and we didn't get a chance to talk about weekend. We got 9 minutes left, but we're probably going long because I got a lot of comments to get to. Caitlin Clark is really getting beat up in the WNBA. A lot of physical play to be expected, I suppose, because some of these women, I'm not sure if they get what Caitlin Clark really means to that league, but I don't have a problem with veterans. Well, Angel Reese isn't a veteran, and she had kind of a rough move on her too, but there is something to be said for veterans trying to put a rookie in their place a little bit. But she's really going to make your paydays a lot better. One of the best softball games in years. I believe we're talking about UCLA. Danny's a big UCLA fan, and Oklahoma yesterday, as Kenny brought up earlier. Keith Jackson Profar is on line 1 or on his break from work selling encyclopedias. I think I called this guy Jackson Profar for about 10 years. Danny, if that's some stars, I thank you so much. That's what I've learned from this, that if it's blank, stars have come my way. So I appreciate that very much. Drew expects Ehrlich to indeed hit better than 254, probably in the 270, 280 range. Catchers in particular have a reputation for blossoming late in their career. Very good point. Look at Trevino. Didn't George hire and fire? Actually, John DeLon with us from LSU. Sorry, LSU fan. Hope you watched our Harvey Williams interview Friday, or if you haven't, please do. I had a lot of fun with Harvey. John is an SEC fan and an LSU fan, as is James Martin. Hope you guys both check out that Harvey Williams interview if you haven't seen it. We had a lot of fun for a little over an hour. Georgia hired and fired Billy 5 times, and he's getting ready to hire Billy for a 6th time when Billy tragically died in a car accident on Christmas Day of 1989. Kyrie, yuck. Yuck. Listen, I'm not a Kyrie fan. Kyrie's played great in these playoffs. I'll give credit where credit is due. Kyrie's a good basketball player. He's played great in these playoffs. He had a great season. I don't care for Kyrie's views on a lot of things. That's fine. Everybody's entitled to their views. I think if you think the earth is flat, I think you're nuts. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're crazy. And I've offered many times, some of you guys are newer to the show than others, I have offered many times in the past to pick up Kyrie wherever he'd like to start and drive him as far as he'd like to go, and we will not fall off the end of the year. He has not taken me up on that. Dave, this is a tough question for me. George, I give George credit for revitalizing the Yankee dynasty in the 70s, or helping to do so. He put money into the franchise where CBS wasn't, put money into the stadium where CBS wasn't. So did the city, by the way. But, George was responsible for as many bad seasons as he was good seasons with the Yankees. Because the approach he took, in the 70s when they won, he took advantage of free agency like none of the other owners did. He brought in Catfish, that was really the precursor, and that was a little bit different situation than the other free agents. But he brought Reggie in here, and he brought Don Gullett, who was a great pitcher before he blew out his arm. He brought in Goose. He brought in a number of other guys. But that approach worked then, and then it stopped working because instead of developing players, we traded them all for marginal players who never made it here because they couldn't play in New York or they weren't as good as he thought they were. And, for every Reggie Jackson, there's 5 Steve Kemps. So, George was his own worst enemy. And whether George belongs in a Hall of Fame, I'm going to say no. Too long of a wait between games if we're talking about NBAs. Again, I think that's what you're talking about. Paul, I'm talking, we're talking a week between the end of the conference finals and the final series starting. That's crazy. Then there's 3 days between games 1 and 2, and then 2 days between every other game. Too long. 1 game is all you need. 1 day is all you need. We did talk there, so I caught up pretty quick. Is that right? Did I catch up that quick? I did say hello to Nick Botkins. You still there? Thanks for tuning in today, Nick. Nick does some great stuff over there on Let's Talk Sports. Him and Scott Kobe both. You guys can feel free to put a little plug in for your shows here as well. Scott, please do as well. Get past these hockey stuff now. Quick tennis question. I think this is our first one here. Keith, what year did the Mets and Red Sox play in the World Series? 1986. It's me. I think he's just being I don't remember that at all. If you get out Red Sox fan out here, Scott. Yes, I understand. As a Patriot fan, there's some of those days that have blacked out for me. I've heard rumors they've lost 2 Super Bowls to the Giants. I don't really know, but the Red Sox did lose to the Mets in a very tough way, unfortunately, in 1986. But that was a weird, fluky postseason. And Bill Buckner, by the way, gets a lot of bad juju for little reason. I mean, he's not the reason they lost that series in my mind. He is the poster child for it. But first of all, John McNamara should have taken him out of the game, stapled him, and coming in and replacing him on defense through the entire playoffs and much of the regular season, I believe. Scott would know better than I. That's mistake number 1. And by the way, only the tying run scored on that play, I believe. No, maybe it was a winning run. Sorry, I apologize for that. They still had game 7, which they were ahead. Anyway, Bill Buckner got ripped for years, and I do believe before Bill Buckner passed away, he came back to Boston, and Boston gave him a hero's welcome, if I'm not mistaken. Alan P. has done a great job with his podcast. I agree 100%, Rick. Alan was a diamond in the rough when he started, and he gives me way too much credit for helping him. I didn't help him improve. He improved himself. I convinced him to kind of start doing this. It all started with a little spot where I think I had a interview guest not show up, and I brought Alan in out of the audience, and we had some fun. And Alan has gotten better and better and better, and I expect greater things out of Alan. He's done a great job, and you can catch his stuff on Let's Talk Sports as well. We've had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun with that rivalry revisited. Excuse me. Scott probably had hopefully Scott had as much fun as I did. Ron Emery, who won the Jennings Trophy just over 10 years ago, went 17-1 in 21 games, 1.94 goals against average. I wish I could get rid of these damn hiccups. Oh. Drew's comment here. This is kind of what I'm getting at, Drew. When I say George brought back that dynasty, it was, and I think if I wasn't clear, I will be now. Yes, the free agency had just begun. And again, the Catfish deal was a little bit different than anybody else because that was, a one-off deal where Charlie reneged on some payments to a charity, and an arbitrator made Catfish a free agent, and he brought him in here. So his money, yes, brought that back. I will say, I've said forever, and you just heard me say it, that George Steinbrenner is the most overrated owner in the history of baseball, and there's been a lot of revisionist history when it comes to George. Chaos. Even when they were winning in 77, 78, they should have won the 81 World Series. Chaos. was always the order of the day. And they had professional players who could put that aside in 77 and 78 and win despite the owner. They may very well have done just that. Win to spite the owner. But then that model just fell apart in the 80s. We never had a pitching staff that was any good. And as I just said, he didn't know how to spend his money because he for every one Reggie Jackson, there was 5 Steve Kemps. Steve Kemp was a nice ball player in Detroit. He had no business playing in New York. He wasn't built to play here. I say this all the time. Certain guys can't play under that type of microscope. Steve Kemp was one of them. There's 100 of them with the Yankees. Eddie Whitson, Steve Trout. I go on and on. Mike Phelps. Not Mike Phelps. What was his name? Phelps. Can't think it. Ken Phelps. The first baseman they traded Jay Buhner for. Good grief. He destroyed the farm system. So, yes, Drew, far more negative than positive. So, again, hence George will probably make the Hall of Fame. He should. Danny says, we all know that even during George's suspensions, he was making. Nah, that's not true. That's not true. That's totally not true. It may not have been the first suspension when he was suspended for illegal campaign contributions to the Nixon campaign. But his second suspension with Howie Spira, I have lots of resources that I can go back to that, and again, unless they're all wrong, which I doubt, it was George Michael, or George Michael. I don't think George Michael had anything to do with this. It was Gene Michael and Buck Showalter who rebuilt this team. I guarantee if George was there, we would not have allowed kids like Bernie Williams to mature in the major leagues. Bernie got off to a horrible start. He'd have traded him away in a second. There's no way George was pulling any strings or making any final decisions on anything during that Howie Spira suspension. In fact, the first thing he did when he comes back is fire Buck after, they likely, again, can't really tell. Very good chance they'd have won the World Series in 1994 without the player strike. Player strike screwed the Expos and they screwed the Yankees. Expos, I would have seen the Expos Yankees World Series that year. They screwed up Matt Williams out of chase at 60 home runs. They cheated Tony. Now they cheated themselves, but to be fair, Tony Gwynn out of a chance at 400. But there's no way George was making the final decisions in those. No way. George was 7 championships. By the way, I think that number's 1, 2, 3. No, you're right. Yeah, you're probably right. I don't think it's 11 AL championships, though. I don't feel like they were in that many World Series. I feel like it was more like 9. 78, 79. Oh, sorry. I take that back. 76. I missed. All right, you're fine. Am I supposed to discount all the bad years we had? That's a great record. 7 world championships in, 25 years. A little more than that. 30 years. 30 years. 30 years, and we haven't won since. I know we haven't won since George's been gone, but I don't think that's the reason. Am I supposed to just ignore all these bad people? He destroyed the farm system. You know what you killed me to watch Jay Buhner play for the Mariners? Ugh. So again, 4 of those championships may very well not have happened if George was around. So that's what I'm discounting that. I'll give you the first 2. I'll even give you the last one. But George fell in love with everybody else's players and hated his own. We don't sign Danny Pettit, but we chased down freaking Ed Whitson's. Again, different time frames. How many players did he bring in here that couldn't play in New York? How many world championships did he win in the 80s? They went 17 years without a championship. That's longer than before he got there, by the way. That was 14 years. 17 years without a championship. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. What are you talking about? 21 years. No, 96. I'm doing my math wrong. 96. 17 years. 18 years. Am I supposed to forget all about that? Yeah, George did some good stuff. George's money, and I agree with Drew 100%. In the beginning, he played the free agency game very well. And I will say those Yankee teams in 78 and 79 won despite George because he created a lot of that chaos. And so did Billy. We talked about it with Billy Jr. when we interviewed him. Billy didn't want Reggie. Billy wanted Joe Rudy and Bobby Grich on that team. Signing Reggie was a good move. George also chased Reggie away. And Reggie was probably done. He had a couple of good years in California after that, but Reggie was probably close to done. But he chased him out of town. And all through the 80s, I'm looking at pitching staffs with frickin' Ed Whitson, Steve Trout, the whole circus with Billy back and forth. Fired Yogi. I'll never forgive him for firing Yogi. Promised Yogi a full year. Fires him after 16 games, 14 games, whatever it was. Chased Yogi away for 2 decades. A lot more bad than good. I'm only giving you 3 of those championships at best. The ones in the 90s and 2000s, those teams were built by Gene Michael. I didn't want to call him George Michael. And Buck Showalter. And you gotta be here. You had to be here to really appreciate it. What a zoo it was. Tune into Let's Talk Sports show. This is Scott stuff. Tune into Let's Talk Sports show Monday and Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern. And Let's Talk Major League Baseball Wednesday nights at 8 with Alan Perales and Jonathan Grisham. So there's Scott stuff, guys. Check that out. Scott's really got some great stuff. What you see from Scott here is just the touch. Thank you, Danny. Sorry I had to disagree with you there, but, I respect your opinion. Again, everybody's entitled to an opinion, as am I, and sometimes I'm wrong. I don't think this time I'm wrong. Larry David got to fire George Steinbrenner. George came in and did a few scenes, and it wasn't just there. That's right. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Larry David did the Steinbrenner voice on the Seinfeld show, if that's what Chris is talking about here. They had George when George Costanza got hired by the Yankees. They were going to have some scenes with Steinbrenner. It didn't work out, and I believe now they just showed George in his office, like the back of his head, and I believe the voice was Larry David. Pretty sure. Bill Buckner definitely needlessly ripped, and he threw out the first pitch at 95 at the home opener and got a 10-minute standing ovation from the Boston crowd. And yes, the rivalry show was fun. We had a lot of fun. So. I dislike the Yankees, but damn respect what they accomplished in so many years of contention. And with it came conflicts, for sure. And again, George caused a lot of those conflicts. George is a very complicated figure for me in my head. And again, I'll tell you, Danny, since George died, and I want to say 2010, right? God, is that right? 14 years ago? There's a lot of revisionist history about George Steinbrenner. And what's left out is the fact that this team was irrelevant until he got suspended by Faye Vincent. And the team was allowed, and George did it again. Gene Michael was allowed to let the kids progress. Do you really think, looking back at George Steinbrenner's history from 1981 until 1992 or 3, whenever he got suspended, there's any reason to think that nucleus of Pettit and Posada and Rivera and Jeter and Williams would have been around? No. There's no way those 5 guys are still on that team in 1996 when they finally win. Never. Oh, I know all this Yankees talk. Well, we're running long. If we're running. Happy birthday to, I don't know if Raul Ibanez was a big sensation with the Yankees. 52 years old. I do remember Raul Ibanez. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he did come in here and have quite an impact early, Chris. And I'm trying to think where he came from. Didn't he come from the Royals? Ibanez. Got any shot of getting the right guy? I do. Look at that. Raul Ibanez. Let's look at his career. We start with Seattle. Here's another guy who matured late, by the way. 29 years old before he had his first big season. At 30 years old, actually, I'll say 30 years old before he had his first big season. It's a great example of what we're talking about before with Jackson Profar. Jack Jackson Profar, sorry. Then he goes to Kansas City, he goes back to Seattle. Comes in New York. He did have he only hit 240, but he had some impact in 2012 with the Yankees. I'm going to believe by the playoffs that year, though, he was struggling. Did finished 24th in the MPV voting somehow that year. Had some great years in Seattle, some great years in Kansas City. Played with Philadelphia. I forgot about that. Some good years there. Fine player. And a great example of what we're talking about of players who are maturing late. 30 years old before he had his first great season. Real quick college football sidetrack from Jai DeLong. Thoughts on Lincoln Riley trying to get out of the LSU game? I haven't dove into it that far, Chris. We can certainly look to do that on Wednesday. I can look at it a little further. Is he given a reason for trying to get out of it? I don't know. I'm guessing going to the Big Ten, he probably has looked to maybe find another cupcake like the SEC teams do. Sorry, every team does. Looks for cupcakes for some of their out-of-conference games. So I'm not sure what the details are in that, but I'll dive into it. You can fill me in a little bit, but I know you're not a big fan of West Coast football, Lincoln Riley specifically. I'll have to look into the details and kind of dig into that a little more, though. I think George Costanza's character was named after Steinbrenner. I'm not sure. I'm not sure of that, but I do know that George Costanza's character was really Larry David. In fact, Jason Alexander talks about the fact that it was like 2 years maybe into the show, and he was having trouble with something in lines, and Larry did him, and he realized at that point that he was actually playing Larry David, and that's a well-known fact for sure. So, Drew, you enjoy your weekend as well, the rest of your weekend. Hope everyone has a good week. Weather looks good until later in the week, so you have a good one, Drew, and everybody have a good weekend. I think we'll call it a day here. John DeLon, I'm not ignoring your LSU question. Remember, I will address it on the college football huddle on Wednesday night, and I'll do a little bit of research into that. Guys, been a great day. Thanks to everybody for all of your input, as always. Thanks to Jim Biringer from FullPressHockey.com and Let's Talk Sports for coming in and and giving his insight on the Yankees. Anyway, I don't know what that was. Then he stopped typing. Thanks to everybody for tuning in today. We'll see you Wednesday night on the College Football Huddle. Check out the interview with Harvey Williams from Friday, former LSU standout, John DeLong. I think you told me he was one of your favorites. We had a lot of fun conversation that day. We'll see you next week on Sunday as well. You guys have a great Sunday afternoon. Keith Engle for TGI Sports Talk, Sunday Stream of Consciousness. I'm out.